Greetings, StephenGray here. Welcome again to StephenGray Vision YouTube channel, and also available as an audio podcast on Anchor.fm. Now, normally when you see my face here, it would be by way of entering pretty soon into an interview with a leading spokesperson in the field of psychedelics. However, well, this will actually happen. However, I felt like I needed to put a little intro in because this one that you are about to watch is different. It's because I've been doing co-productions with Mark Caron from our mutual organization Spirit Plant Medicine, associated with the conference Spirit Plant Medicine Conference. And we've been interviewing the same kind of people that I would have been interviewing on my own, but just so that you didn't get confused when you would see Mark come on as the first person to speak, I just wanted to welcome you in this way. And so we go on from here.
Hello and welcome to Conscious Living Radio. My name is Mark Caron, and today we are here pre-recording as always because the radio station is still in lockdown. It's not open downtown in downtown Vancouver, and that would be 100.5 FM CFRO in Vancouver. And today we are talking about spirit plant medicine again. It's that time of the year where our conference is coming up, and I'm here with my special co-host on the program today, Mr. StephenGray, to announce our very special guest that we're really excited about. So, Stephen, over to you.
Sure. Well, yes, indeed. This is not an exaggeration to say special guest today. There aren't a lot of people around, apart from celebrities and politicians who you can honestly say need no introduction, but Paul Stamets is approaching that category, I would say. He's involved in many things around the world these days. Nonetheless, a short bio for him by way of introduction. He's a world-renowned expert on the medicinal, edible, environmental, and spiritual uses and benefits of mushrooms. His walk through life has followed mycelial paths that have led to stunning breakthroughs. He's discovered and named numerous new species of psilocybin mushrooms. Paul is the author of 6 books, including Mycelium Running and the go-to compendium, Psilocybin Mushrooms of the World. He's also editor and contributor to the recent book, Fantastic Fungi, and central to the remarkable documentary film of the same name, directed by Louis Schwartzberg. And I have read this book. The film, by the way, is truly remarkable. My wife and I have seen it twice. It's brilliant if you haven't seen it. It's just beautiful and full of great information on many things to do with mushrooms. And this book, which I have read recently, is also quite remarkable. So, welcome, Paul, and it really is an honor to have you with us. I know how busy you are in your life, and so it's very much appreciated to have you take this time with us.
Well, thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Mark. I'm honored to be here.
Great. So I mentioned that I have a number of questions from the book, but also that, take it anywhere. So let me fire out a question and you can go anywhere you want with it. What I did was I took down quotes from the book, actually. And so one of them near the beginning was by Richard Lowe, and it was, the question is, what are the implications of what he called, quote, nature deficit disorder?
Well, that's a great question, and it's something that, someone else coined it. I don't remember the person. He spoke at Pioneers a number of years ago, but it really speaks to the fact that we are now several degrees removed from being in intimate contact with nature, especially people living in cities, et cetera. And the nature deficit syndrome just, I think, speaks from the fact that we are suffering now, not only in terms of our health, but psychologically, from being not in the woods, not in contact with nature, not in contact with soil. Know that children's contact with soil is extremely important for their immune system and reducing allergies. And we live in increasingly sterilized environments, or environments where the microbiomes of those ecosystems are artificial, and they're not compatible with the natural microbiomes that have given us our, to date, evolutionary advantage, though someone could argue against that now. And so I think it's really important that we look at the fact that we are an organism that has existed and evolved within natural ecosystems that have a complexity of species. And as we lose species complexity, it's like losing rivets out of an airplane. We begin to unravel the very foundation of the natural systems that have given us health. Now, very specifically, what that means is that we are losing more than 30,000 species per year, and about 8.5 million species on this planet that are estimated. So in 100 years, that's more than a third of the biodiversity that's gotten us here today. So when we have the sudden catastrophic loss, of the members in the microbial and the community, the microorganisms as well as macroorganisms, these macroorganisms are more sexy. You can see them, lions and tigers and other, birds and things like that. But what's really unraveling underneath our feet is the loss of the diversity in the soils. And the soils are created by fungi. And as we do clear cuts and we cut down the forests, we are dismantling the food that the fungi need to create soils. And where do your soils come from? They come from fungi. What the fungi need to consume? They need to consume and to a large degree decomposed wood. And when we deforest the environment, we're removing the menu of food that's necessary for the fungi to build the soils. So fungi are the foundation of the food web, and by eliminating the food that these fungi need, we are impairing our food systems. And so this is really important that we re-engage nature on the most elemental form. And as Jane Goodall said just recently, which I was quite surprised, but I think she was absolutely correct, is that factory farming could threaten and is threatening the existence of the human species. This is something that we have to understand, that our industrialization of agriculture, our industrialization of our food supply comes at a cost. It's not sustainable. And the sustainability of ecosystems with their complexity gives us long-term benefit that we are right now destroying. And so that's what I think is relates to this nature deficit syndrome. Is we're not engaging nature and respecting the metrics that give us, for instance, in a forest is way beyond timber board feet of lumber. That is such a myopic, narrow view of the value of the forest. What about its biodiversity? What about its clean water? What about the cooling effect and the carbon sink? What about recreational possibilities? What about teaching children about nature so they don't have nature deficit syndrome? These are all things that add a quality of life that we are not economically have created the metric of measurement. Instead, the industrialization of the forest, looking at solely in terms of timber board feet of lumber, is the metric that economists and policymakers are using to make drastic decisions that affect our future.
Yeah. Well, the next few quotes that I took out of the book are directly related to that, and you've already alluded to them, but let me fire them at you anyway, because maybe you can take it even further. This one is from the book, and it's the future of planetary stability may depend on the convergence of human consciousness with mycelial intelligence. Can you elaborate on that? Of course you can.
Well, there is a revolution literally from the underground, which I'm happy to say that our expanding community of people are recognizing around the world the value of mycelium. There's just thousands of younger people in particular that are looking at mycelium for biomaterials, for replacing styrofoam, for new building materials, new ways of being able to support regenerative farming. There's so many different, because the mycelium's network-like design is designed in a way, we split from fungi about 650 million years ago. Fungi gave birth to animals. We are animals. Anybody wanted to see on that? But fungi gave birth to animals, and the fungi went underground. They extracellularly digest its nutrients, bringing nutrients directly into the cell through the cell walls. Animals, on the other hand, when we split, encapsulate our nutrients in a cellular sac. And then we produce enzymes and we digest foods within a cellular sac. And that was pretty much, in rough terms, the fork in the road, so to speak, that gave birth to the animals. Well, these underground networks are elaborated with these very, very fine fibers. And we know epigenetically now, in a swath, and we actually did the math, and I spoke to this on the film, and actually I had one of these moments like, oh no, I may have missed something, because in the film I raised my hands out and I say, in a swath of ground this wide, there can be trillions, literally trillions of end branches of mycelium. And then I was at the rough cut in the movie going, I'm pretty sure that's true, but I wasn't quite convinced. Because I couldn't recall all the math on it. So I reached out to my another mycologist who's a mathematical mycologist named Nick Money, who's from Ohio University. And he goes, well, that's a great question. I'm bored today, so let me do the calculations. He came back and he goes, well, actually, you understated it. It's about 8 trillion connections. Mm-hmm. But that speaks because these network-like design, they're microfilters. They're not only capturing flow of nutrients carried by water, they're not only creating water. Many people don't know this. 10 to 20% of the mycelium, when it digests a substrate, that substrate becomes water. So it actually hydrates the environment as it digests. And so this is why spongy habitats of mycelium retain water. They have a lot more moisture in the soil, which benefits, of course, the plurality of species that give rise to the canopy of the trees and the foliage that then creates the debris fields to feed the mycelium. So they're deterministically trying to create habitats that support a plurality and biodiversity of species, because the more species that you have, the more skill sets these different species have to respond to certain challenges. So the mycelium sets up guilds. Guilds of cooperating members that then as a complex community can march forward to be sustainable for the benefit of that community and to resist as a host defense of communities against pathogens that can disrupt homeostasis. So these things are very deterministic in the way they're able to grow and produce. Epigenetically, what happens when there's a trillion endpoints, in a meter diameter swath of mycelium, they're like little scientists at the end points of the hyphae, the little ends of the mycelium. And if they encounter a new toxin, a new pesticide, a new alien food, a new chemical toxin of any sort, if it can code for the new enzymes that can break that down for a new food source, what happens, which is remarkable, is what happens is then the mycelium fans out and grows. It's able to grow because it produces those enzymes that can break down the material as a new food source. And then epigenetically, the coding of those genes that are now created to digest that new food source then goes back into the mycelium. So the mycelium becomes educated. So you have basically trillions of little scientists, constantly doing experiments. And if they discover something, the community benefits. So this is why the mycelium is a network-based design, and I believe the invention of the computer internet is an inevitable consequence of networks that have shown through evolution to be more resilient. And so we're building off the successes that we've already seen in nature. And network-based organisms, I think, will be found throughout the cosmos. This is the way of nature, not the exception. I believe that matter begets life, life becomes single cells grow up, they branch, they rebranch, then they encounter other networks and mosaics or overlying networks, then cooperate with compatible guilds of organisms. They have a truce, they have a relationship, and they synergize, and oasis environments then begin to expand. So I think these fungal networks tapping into their innate network-like design attaches into an innate intelligence of nature that has been proven over literally billions of years.
Wow, very impressive stuff.
Mm-hmm.
As I say, I wrote down a number of quotes, and you've already been alluding to some of them. So maybe I'll fire 2 out at you that are relevant to what you were just talking about, and see where you go with those. One, they're both quotes from you, Paul. One is the story of fungi. You say I say fungi, you say fungi. Let's call the whole
It's all
thing
correct.
Orpheus. What's that?
Yeah, the Oxford English Dictionary is fungi with
Okay,
a J.
cool. All right.
But if you're from Spain or Mexico, it's fungi, or from Italy, it's fungi. So it doesn't matter. They're all correct.
Right on. Okay, so here's two. The story of fungi is the story of essential unity. That's a quote from you from the book. And another one, survival depends not on the fittest, but on the collective, which I think you just alluded to a moment ago. Do you want to take off a little from there?
Yeah, I very much know and believe that there are some things as a scientist over the years, you have these, these truths that are just self-apparent. Is that our communities expand and are resilient because of the extension of generosity of surplus. I have more food than my neighbor does. I have more firewood just recently. I gave several cords of firewood to poor people. I have a lot of firewood right now. I have more firewood than I need. And these neighbors of mine, disabled, one of them, older, First Nation, by giving them firewood as an example of my extension of generosity to help the community. Well, that's a simple little example, but it can be elaborated in a million ways. We create guilds of members in community that are cooperating individuals who seek to not only sustain themselves, but through their efforts, by set or circumstance or coincidence or good luck or just skill, they have a surplus beyond their needs. That can be shared with a community of people who don't have those same assets or same abilities. They may have other abilities that they share. So the reciprocity of generosity builds communities. And that, I think, is really redefines this whole concept of Darwinian evolution as being the survival of the fittest. It's not. It's the survival of communities, of the generosity of the individuals who share resources. And I think this is the whole basis of how we got here today. And I think this is the basis of how we will get into the future. Now, I am not at all, I'm a capitalist. I believe in, and my efforts should be rewarded. But how much do I need? I mean, how many toys do I need? I mean, how much do I really need? So I definitely believe that I should, get credit for my work. I work hard, but then sometimes I get an avalanche way beyond my own needs. It just seems to be morally right that I share that. Why be stingy with resources you don't need? How many toys you need in your sandbox? The kid next door in the sandbox didn't have any. And by that extension of generosity, you make people feel happy. You make people feel respected. They want to do something for you in return. So one of my greatest bumper stickers that I have, and I actually etched it on my wall, is to remember to practice random acts of kindness. Oh, yeah. And I think the random acts of kindness mantra, whoever made that up, is so true to my life. And I never will achieve the level that I aspire to, but I will certainly try to. And but given that, at the same time, you don't want to be exploited. There are people who expect you to do that, but they don't pull their share. So no freeloaders here, folks. You work hard, we all work hard, we share hard, we build our respect for each other stronger as a community.
Yeah. And
So,
go ahead, Mark. Yeah.
well, I have a question around that because I love what you're saying and I completely agree with that. How do we, random acts of kindness, working in community, how do we inspire maybe a more, I guess the word is more quickly, global change around that philosophy? Because we've got, as you say, being a capitalist, we've got that going on everywhere. But how do we inspire that so, the people who have more share more?
2 words: psilocybin mushrooms.
Good one.
I love it. Yeah, no, and so
the message that most of us receive from a hero's journey on psilocybin mushrooms is the unity of being, the unity of shared consciousness, of shared responsibility. When we have the empathy and concern for our fellow citizens, for the other and I mean not just people, but species in the ecosystem, when we have that understanding of the collective consciousness and the fact that we have individual responsibility and capabilities, then I think that is what's happening right now. There's a revolution from the underground. There's a revolution for the freedom of consciousness. And what's happening now, especially with the psilocybin mushrooms, is that it makes nicer people. We have preliminary evidence that it makes smarter people. I think psilocybin mushrooms and psilocybin analogs, besides psilocybin and psilocin, are Einstein molecules. I believe they increase intelligence. We need to increase our intelligence to have the creativity to create the solutions that can get us out of the mess today. Because currently, the people who are piloting, who are captains, of our economic futures, are misguiding us. It is truly a train wreck that we're experiencing, and it's now for us to go over control of the navigation systems of the principal players on this planet that are misdirecting the resources and threatening the commons. And when you threaten the common, you threaten the soil, when you threaten biodiversity, you ultimately threaten your own children's lives. And so this whole concept that First Nations have of 7 generations is more than right on. It is solidly defined now by science, that the implications of what our actions today reverberate throughout time. And I feel the call of my ancestors and the call of my descendants for us to wake up and do something about this. So the good news is, and I have a few slides that I would like to show that are part of this narrative. And I don't know if that's appropriate now, Stephen, or you want to ask me a few more questions?
No, go for it, Paul, please.
Okay, I will. Let's see if I can get here. Whoops, well, that's not you. Hold on. So I believe that the foundation that we have of the therapeutic benefits of psilocybin is supported by science. And I live in a science-based reality. I believe in science. I believe in facts. I also believe in when you have multiple experts in different universities all having a chorus of conclusions that are validating each other's studies is not a one-off. It's not like an exceptional result. So our good friend, Mark Hayden, the founder of MAPS Canada, initially put this together. It was a really impactful slide. So Mark and I worked together, and I could have added some more things because these are just basically the universities and institutions that are currently doing research on psilocybin and psychedelics. And then my good friend and partner, Dr. Pam Crisco, who's a co-founder of the Canadian Psychedelic Association, we put together 2 more slides. And this is just the North American institutions involved in psilocybin research. Now, this is Stanford, Johns Hopkins, Yale University, New York School of Medicine, Mount Sinai. This is the University of British Columbia. These have all gone through peer review. They've all gone through IRBs, institutional review boards, to physicians to make sure of essentially 3 things. Is the suggested clinical study based on good science? Is there a very low risk of harm? And then can it address a societal problem or a health issue that is desperately needed that's not currently being adequately addressed by other medicines? Well, those are 3 primary criteria. There are more. And so this is amazing. And this is why I want physicians or those who are skeptics out there to pay attention. This is just not one institution or 2 institutions. We have up to 47 institutions around the world now currently doing research on psilocybin mushrooms for good reason. Not only for PTSD and depression, but now it's elaborating into many other issues of concern that basically are related to your neurological health. And as you have neurodegeneration, it represents itself in many disease states, from lack of coordination, memory to Alzheimer's, to mood, depression, creativity. All those things are unfolded. So, and then, so that was not a COVID cough. That was a cannabis cough. Full disclosure here, okay?
Yeah.
Not that I haven't smoked yet today, but after this interview, I definitely will. I love that we have the freedom to be able to say that. So anyhow, the universities in Europe and the colleges in Europe, I mean, it goes on and on, right? So this is really amazing that we have come to this point in time, and with the science and understanding of the use of psilocybin, that they can be so beneficial, and that literally hundreds, if not thousands, of physicians objectively looking at the research, putting their prejudices aside from preconceived notions, and just looking at the research, have all come to the same conclusion. So I think this represents a revolution in the sciences to recognize that psilocybin can have a major impact in improving, mood and creativity. And I have more to say on that. And you're probably familiar with the Theracell movement.
Sorry, which movement?
The Theracell movement.
Yes.
I'm not.
Therapeutic.
No. Mm-hmm.
You're not. Well, with their permission, I'd like to show a short little video for the individuals who are facing their imminent death. And all of us will share in this experience, unless you have a sudden accident. But most of us will see our death coming, and you have to reconcile, what does it mean? What does it mean to have been born? What does it mean to die? These are the questions that may never be able to be answered, but the anxiety that people feel facing their death is real. I've lost my brother. I've lost my mother. I've lost my father. I was with my father and my mother to the moment they died. And many of the listeners here have gone through the same experience. This is just fundamental, and for being compassionate at the end of your life. And what law enforcement officer is going to arrest you for possession of psilocybin when you're on your deathbed? I suggest that's not a very good career move. And this is why, and it speaks to compassion. So, this is a short little video I want to share, followed up by a second video.
It's very difficult to wrap your head around. I'm dying. The chances are that I'm not going to be around in a couple of years. I heard about a network in Vancouver of therapists who are treating patients with psilocybin, patients with anxiety, and who are dealing with life and death issues. And I thought that really sounds interesting to me, and there's no danger. I'm there with 2 other people in the room, and so it's something it's worth trying, because I need to be able to enjoy my life. And all of a sudden, everything was light and beautiful and warm, and I felt just this rush of warmth and love and just peace come over me as the lights came up. I'm so fortunate that I had those connections, that I heard about this network of therapists that are willing to risk their licenses to treat people with this drug that's not legal. And I think it's so wrong that people don't have access to this, because people are in pain and dying, and or PTSD or depression, and which studies show psilocybin helps all of those things. And why are we not allowing people to have this drug, but we allow them to have other drugs that are so harmful? We have given people the right to die. And I think that's great. I don't know if I'll be brave enough to choose that option if the time comes. But it's there for people if they need it. But what about living? What do we do in between that part, in the process of dying? It's a long process sometimes. So how are we going to help people through it? Do we want people to be living with the anxiety and fear, or do we want to provide them a way to be able to deal with things that need to be dealt with in their life that are painful and hard, but also be able to experience the love and joy and peace that this has provided to me and to other people that I've talked to. This trip actually changed everything for me, because now I'm able to live each day just with peace and joy and love every day, and not have this thing weigh on me. I feel so much healthier and lighter in a way, even though I have this thing inside me that killed me. But like I said, today I'm not gonna die. I'm good. And that's all any of us have.
She's the most eloquent spokeswoman that I've ever heard for this. And I have a 1-minute contribution that I did at the request of TheraSil as well, which is a movement here in British Columbia to give psilocybin to end-life patients. And the Canadian government now has given exemptions for legal use, and now to 5 or 6 end-of-life patients. And I want to applaud the Canadian government for seeing the wisdom of this. It's being administered very carefully, therapeutically, with professionals. But, you know, this is something that my father died in a state of fear and high anxiety. It was not pleasant to see, folks. Mm-hmm. You know, we're all going to die. Do you want to face your death with optimism and happiness and gratitude? Or do you want to face your death with regret, fear, and anger? I mean, that's really that's literally the fork in the road. And I think for many of us, experience such as she has had sends us on our way in our journey in a healthier and happier way, because it affects everybody in your family and your community, your cousins and your neighbors. And the grief, you know, is like a pebble in a pond, just reverberates out. You want those reverberations to be one of terror, fear, and regret that harms you psychologically with a form of PTSD, or you want to go out and going, oh my gosh. I've had several friends that have gone out with such courage, you know. A good friend of mine, Dr. Manuel Salzman, an MD from Denver, Colorado. And his son asked, this is kind of personal, I don't think he would mind, but his son asked his dad, how are you doing today? And his dad goes, I'm doing great, and died.
Oh.
and he was a tripper, right? He had come to it's a great day. And literally after those few last words, died. He says, I'm doing great. So anyhow, humor aside, but humor is important. Sincerity of this subject, is of course really important. So here's a short video by me. There's 2 things certain in life. We are born and we die. Where we come from, where are we going? With a psilocybin mushroom experience, you suddenly know that you're part of a giant oneness. And it gives you context and consolation about your own mortality. So I think it's critically important that at the end of your life, you have a right to these substances. Who dares say that you do not? When these have been used for thousands, probably tens of thousands, maybe millions of years, and laws have been created to ostracize people who use them only in the past 50 years. I mean, it's not only academically naive, it's immoral. And I think that everyone has a right to how they're going to leave this life. Okay, I have some other slides to show, but I want to bring it back to the conversation here. And but I do have something else I really want to show you, but I want to put that on pause and continue our dialogue.
Sure.
Well, one question I do have, like she was magnificent, really touching in her experience, like you said, just eloquent in how she was speaking. Now, I did notice she used the word drug a couple of times, and magic mushrooms being a fungi. What's the difference when you get into, a therasil, like a drug versus an actual mushroom?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to talk about next. So I could just jump to that, but yeah, you bring up a really good point. Is this magic bullet single molecule approach definitely has its usefulness. The cause and effect can be disambiguated from other potential confounders, things that can confound the conclusion. Because when you take a natural product, what's the active ingredient? And what's the cause and effect? Well, no matter what happens with our laws, 99.9% of people will be taking magic mushrooms, not pure psilocybin. Okay, that's a fact. And one of the reasons why the FDA approved psilocybin, interestingly, and their justification for approval of psilocybin therapeutically by the FDA, they cite the multi-thousand-year history of use of magic mushrooms. Okay, so and then they approve psilocybin as the active ingredient. And then ironically, we have to make the argument why magic mushrooms are safe. Because they contain psilocybin, but they contain these other substances. So how do you standardize a magic mushroom to an active ingredient? And do you need to standardize it to one or multiple active ingredients? It's not psilocybin and psilocybin mushrooms that gives you neurogenic benefit. So I would like to show you exactly what I mean by that. And can I go ahead and go?
Yeah,
yes, of course.
You have free reign, my friend. Absolutely.
Okay. We're along for the ride. Again.
Exactly.
Stamets Luddite is going to try to do this again.
Well, so far so good.
Well, I'm going to skip a whole bunch of ones, and I wanted to just come to, I think, I'll start with this here. So there's a mushroom called lion's mane, which is very powerful in its neurogenic properties, as defined by neurite outgrowths. These are pluripotent cells. We did research with a company in France called Neurofit that analyzes drugs to fight Alzheimer's. So there's something called BDNF. It's basically genes express it that excite neurons to grow. But you can extract this from the endocrine reticulum coming from animals and whatnot, and they basically spike this in vitro to see if you can stimulate neurons to grow. So the control is just saline, and then the BDNF is the kind of the gold standard. And then compared the mycelium of lion's mane, and it increased neurogenesis as defined neurite outgrowth. I want to be careful about that, by 8%. Interesting, the fruit body extract, the extract of the mushrooms actually slowed neurogenesis. That's really important that people understand. Two sides of the same coin. The mycelium stimulated neurogenesis. The fruit body extract actually slowed below baseline. So anyhow, this is over 7 days, done a sextuplet. We have done these you'll see, we've done these tests now several times, I think 6 times now. We started looking at lion's mane and then 3 psilocybin analogs, which are legal. These are things that co-occur in psilocybin mushrooms. There's about 116 species in the genus Psilocybe. The genus holds the most psilocybin mushrooms. And there's about 216 species of mushrooms that contain psilocybin. So the majority of them are in the genus Psilocybe. So, and the most common one used is Psilocybe cubensis. But Psilocybe cubensis contains these psilocybin analogs, baeocystin, norbaeocystin, and norpsilocin. And so when the extracts of the mycelium, it increased in this case, before it was 108%, now it's 111%, within the margin of error. So increased the brain neurons to regrow above baseline. The BDNF went to 42%, but these psilocybin analogs also stimulate neurogenesis. Now, we are the first ones, I believe, ever to show this. If anyone can prove me wrong, please get a hold of me. I want to know. The first ones to show that psilocybin analogs stimulate neurons to proliferate. So we looked at these 3 analogs, and then we went ahead and we started stacking them. Lion's mane, which is an edible choice mushroom, commonly available. Many companies sell supplements of them. Of course, make sure you get the mycelium, obviously, if you want cognitive enhancement. But then if we stack one of these analogs with a lion's mane, other than getting 22%, which would be the expected arithmetic cumulative effect, 118 and 107, you add the numbers up, 122, we got 136. So we got the entourage effect, synergy, showing that we actually stimulated more neurogenesis by combining these two mushrooms, basically analogs from these mushrooms, with lion's mane. So we went ahead, and we have also been working with Harvard Medical School, and we found profound anti-inflammatory properties with lion's mane. This actually reinforces some other research. And we are ongoing with Harvard right now, very exciting projects. I'm bound confidentiality to speak of them, but I will just tell you to stay tuned. We have a number of research papers that will be coming out, peer-reviewed journals, and we're very excited and very grateful to Harvard Medical School, and particularly Rudy Tanzi, for taking a leap of faith and testing our samples. We sent them many samples blinded, then we unmasked them. And lion's mane turned out to be one of the most profound ones, because you're not only getting regrowth of neurons, but it's having anti-inflammatory properties. And the inflammatory consequences of both causing dementia, causing Alzheimer's, and subsequently, it's a slippery slope. And so neuroinflammation causes more neuroinflammation. As you might imagine, anything or dying of the nerves has an inflammatory response all the way up the body, and as a result, it's highly painful. So I came up with a stacking formula of combining psilocybin mushrooms with lion's mane, mycelium, and I stack it with niacin, the vitamin B3. I did this specifically for 3 reasons. One is it becomes like the antabuse. A microdose is subsensorium. It's below the threshold, feeling something. With 50 to 100 milligrams of niacin, with a below threshold dose of psilocybin, then if you try to take 10 times as much, you'd be taking a whole gram of vitamin B3. Most of us has had vitamin B3 flushes before. Your skin is itching. It's very uncomfortable. You're red. I haven't experienced this.
I have too, yeah.
Well, I get some. It's short last, about an hour or so, maybe 2 hours. But so because of that flushing, because it's so irritable, it becomes an antabuse effect. So people don't megadose on a microdose. Well, also because of the itching and excitation of the nerves, it means that I wanted to bring, and it's also a vasodilator, I wanted to bring these beneficial compounds from lion's mane, psilocybin to the endpoints of the nervous system. Neuropathies oftentimes present themselves at the ending of the fingers and the toes. So the idea is and also vitamin B3 has anti-inflammatory properties, and it also has been implicated in having neurogenic properties. So there's really 4 reasons for combining the vitamin B3 with this. So now James Fatima, a good friend of mine, he has the Fatima Protocol. I have my protocol. He's doing it 1 day on, 2 or 3 days off, and repeat. I'm suggesting, and these are both hypotheses, we don't know without the data, but we're collecting the data. And full disclosure, I contributed some money to Quantified Citizen to develop this app. It's called Microdose.me. It's available only on the iPhones. It's free. It's totally anonymous. It's passed peer review and ethics. And this is a way of you being able to monitor your cognitive functions, your neurological state of being with many metrics. And so this is only about 20 seconds long, but what comes after this is really important for you to know. And so you sign up through Quantified Citizen on the Apple app, and what are you microdosing with? How much are you taking? Are you stacking it with lion's mane, niacin, chocolate? And so you go, and then it has these little memory tests. Well, like, can you then light up the flowers in the same way? And they scores you. And then it's got a vision acuity test. It's got an audio test for hearing. We're all going to go downhill, folks, with age. And so this, and then even people who have not microdosed are engaged in this study. On the Joe Rogan podcast, I mentioned this, and over 12,000 people have signed up for this. And so we are now working with the University of British Columbia, Zach Walsh, who I think you know, Dr. Pisco, and we define these microdoses as at less than a 10th gram of Psilocybin cubensis. That's 16% of respondents. Medium dose is 1/10 to a third, and high dose is more than a third. I don't think a third of a gram of cubensis, for me, is a microdose. I feel it. If you can feel it, the definition is not a microdose. But most people in the medium dose range, there's no noticeable effect, except you might feel a little bit in a better mood, but there's no intoxicating effect. You can't say that, well, I'm high. So it's subsensorium, below the threshold of sensing.
Yeah.
So
Can I interrupt for a second? While we're on this, in case we get away from it, I know that your partner Pam Crisco is going to be speaking about microdosing at the conference. And in your book, I forget which author, I didn't write down which author, but one of the authors said there is no good research that confirms the efficacy of microdosing. Could you speak about that, please?
I was alert that author to watch our interview right now, because this is what I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
We have the first evidence, and I want to just, we had 3,486 psilocybin users in this app. Ismail and Kaylin are the two coaches who started Quantified Citizen, who approached Dr. Pam and I, and then we assuaged the metrics on it and contributed to this organization. Now we have also non-microdosers that came in. So as a baseline, they weren't doing any microdosing. So it's a pretty big data set. We had 12,000 people and 3,500 people approximately with psilocybin. And then we have a 1 month window, a 2 month, and 3 month. The data I'm going to show you from our group here, it's just not me, this is our collective co-authors. So this is comparing non-microdoses versus microdoses. Now look at the p-value of significance. It's less than 0.001. For those who don't know, p-value is a 0.05, gives you 95% confidence. The data is strong. 0.01, 99. 0.001 is 99.9% confidence. The change in mental health in terms of depression basically did not change. But those people who are microdosing, when they unmasked the data and they crunched this, and Zach Walsh and his research assistant Joey are the ones that are doing these statistics on this, that a tremendous reduction in depression. So you're saying there's no data? Okay, there's a data point. This is a large data set. We'll look at another one. Mood, increasing in mood. So you have a extraordinary significance in the increase of positive mood and negative mood. You can see baseline is the non-microdosing people, the dark blue line, basically flat. And then negative mood you not only have positive mood, you have negative mood. This is the positive and negative scale, PANAS, which is one of the other scales that are used psychiatrically to determine whether people are depressed or anxiety. And so then we also looked at stacking it with lion's mane. And it's important to know that all the studies in lion's mane that have been published clinically are 8, 12, 16, and 49 weeks. This is a 4-week window. The good news to me is it's not contraindicated. It's not going against. So it's a little bit better, but not statistically significant, but we don't expect to see that. And the other studies have not shown benefit of lion's mane until you push it out beyond 4 weeks. So when you go back to where's the evidence, this is the first microdosing study that's doing a meta-analysis. And what I'd like to point out is that, and despite the variability in the dosage, despite the variability in the amount of psilocybin in the mushroom samples that people were consuming, and despite the receptivity of the individuals, many of us know someone will take 2 grams or 3 grams of psilocybin cubensis, they'll feel a strong effect, other people feel no effect. So despite those 3 confounders, there's substantial signal above the noise. When we refine this data set, which we are doing, funneling down, and we still have, large numbers of participants here, in some cases, hundreds of participants. When we start carving down and taking away those other confounders, then the significance values are likely to even to be stronger. So this is huge. Psilocybin mushrooms with the baeocystin, norbaeocystin, and psilocin and other compounds are giving a statistically significant result. And I dare say this, and again, prove me if I'm wrong, of a better therapeutic output in terms of depression of any drug heretofore ever discovered or tested, even that of pure psilocybin. So this is an extraordinary result, which speaks to the entourage effect, subsorium microdosing. So all the studies that are going on, most all of them, not all of them, are with macrodosing. You're in a hospital environment, you're getting 30 to 40 milligrams of psilocybin. You have nurses, you have, a therapist, you have a highly controlled room, music and lighting, everything is controlled. This is also people in a non-controlled setting. So you'd think in a non-controlled setting, the influence and the data, the signal would be diluted. So even though we have all these confounders, we're seeing this statistical significance. So I think that answers your question, Stephen. So we are planning publication, and we're real excited. And this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot more data that's being unveiled, and will be unveiled in our papers. So which is better, psilocybin mushrooms or psilocybin? Well, the argument can be made that psilocybin mushrooms are widely available. They're affordable. They're not controlled by pharmas, grown at home, long established cultural use, the entourage benefit, which I just spoke about, and the appeal of a natural form. The disadvantages of psilocybin is it's not yet widely available. It's outside of clinical trials. It's controlled by pharma. Who knows if it's affordable? Right now, it's $10,000 to $20,000 for a therapeutic session, is I think is the going rate. And the funding is primarily investors who want to make money, as opposed to. Now, there are advantages to the pharmaceuticals. The disadvantage of psilocybin mushrooms is variability, which I've mentioned, contamination due to molds and bacteria. This is my number one concern, is people getting spoiled mushrooms that are dried down that have endotoxins from bacteria.
In that case,
that's a very severe potential threat. Yes, Mark.
So one question about that is it's just a public service announcement. Is there a way to tell if you find a way to get some psilocybin mushrooms? Is there a way to tell if it's been contaminated with mold or bacteria for the average person out there?
The average person, no. And you speak to a need. Should there be a way to tell? Yes. And that is by having psilocybin. That's why if we had CGMP approved psilocybin mushroom production facilities that are responsible for their product, that are inspected by Canada Health or the FDA in the United States, then the public health it will be better supported than the underground market right now. And I just know at Burning Man or something, I'm very careful and I don't accept any psilocybin mushrooms in my possession. But I have had people come up saying, "Hey, do these look good to you?" And I give them all the caveats and all the disclaimers, that are necessary legally in case I'm being taped. I'm happy to say about 8 out of 10 times, the quality of the material was superb. I mean, absolutely, people knew what they were doing. 2 out of 10 times, it was necrotic tissue, black and full of bacteria and dried. And I just told them, don't dare eat these. These are really badly contaminated. And so FYI, this is a legitimate concern. So there's no accountability in the underground market, the lack of confidence, for consumers. The one I didn't list that it really concerns me is that the underground market doesn't pay taxes. They're using our roads, they're using our health system, they're using the post office, they're using the fire department when their house catches on fire, but they're not stepping up their plate to pay taxes. All of us other people are paying taxes. So to me, that's a really big issue. But the quality controls that the pharmaceutical industry brings to the table is CGMP standards. The content's guaranteed, impurities are minimized. It is controlled by the pharmaceutical companies. So in this case, that they have accountability. And there's confidence by the consumers. So it's interesting that you have this narrative of polar opposites, both of which have advantages and disadvantages. And I think with psilocybin mushrooms, the disadvantages could be standardized, provided the government comes in to create the structures. Now, this is not to say that people are going to stop growing psilocybin mushrooms at home. I'm not saying that they will be, and I'm not inviting the government to prosecute people, to be very clear, but governmental controls in terms of food safety is something that serves the public interest. You want to make sure the fish you're eating, the oysters you're eating don't have red tide. You want to make sure that you're not going to get die or harmed from taking a substance that didn't have high quality control. So we need those quality controls in place. So there is a pathway for drug development. That we can standardize botanical products to give you approval for the FDA. So to me, I think this creates the ecosystem that we're dealing in is people medicine versus profit medicine.
Beautiful.
And I'm very concerned. Right now, I've had to serve 7 cease and desist letters, primarily to companies in Canada, that have put my name on psilocybin products, selling them over the internet. They didn't ask me, they didn't inform me. I knew nothing about it until people started sending copies of this. And so I told my lawyers I had to take the alpha position. They're endangering me. They're exploiting my name. They're doing it for money. They can say they're doing it for the people, but that's so full of BS. Their primary motivation is for profit. Absolutely. So the profit medicine is what these new startup companies are involved in. Dr. Pam and I look at these startup companies, and oftentimes there's not a single physician. It's people that have never had any history in this movement. They have no credibility. And some of them are blatant in their disclosures that they have created this company in order to exploit an economic opportunity that is so antithetical to the message of the mushrooms.
That's what I'm hearing as well. And it's the same thing that happened in Canada with cannabis too. All these big, profit-making people came into it and ended up getting disappointed. But that's another issue. And by the way, people medicine versus profit medicine is the title of your talk that you're going to be doing at the Spirit Plant Medicine Conference on October 23rd to 25th, right, Paul?
Yes, it is. So, but I mean, this is the good news is, I call it the 80-20 principle. You can call it the 90-10. 80% of the people involved in this psilocybin ecosystem are good people. Their lives have been changed. They're there for the right reason. Some of them just want to jump on the bandwagon. You want to jump on the train of popularity. 20% of them have very Machiavellian interests. They don't give a flying F about the people that they're going to help. They see it as an economic opportunity to make money. And with that, With that, my biggest concern is with these startup companies and these for-profit pharmaceuticals that have gone to sell stock and even gone on their stock exchanges, they have an obligation, unless they're a B corporation, they have an obligation to maximize profits from their investors. Any other competitive company, including me, could be seen as a threat to their bottom line. So when they have $100 million in their war chest, this is the classic example of our president and the contractors in New York City. He refused to pay them, and then he just avalanched them with lawsuits, and the legal expenses exceeded the cost of the invoice they're arguing about. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, this sort of Machiavellian aggressive actions against other people in the landscape because they could erode their profits is a very, very sinister reality of capitalism. And so I am going to be and am very active in this space. We are applying for a DEA license in the United States. So we'll be CGMP producing psilocybin mushrooms. I have 6 patents meandering through the patent office for the novelty of the inventions. And I'm going to use these ultimately in the best way possible to benefit the commons and to steer this spirit medicine into a capitalistic ecosystem in the best way that I know how. So I ask people to trust me on that. I feel like my mission is sacred and important, but at the same time, you know, I didn't get 2 black belts from laying down. You know, I like the IKEA approach to business, and with respect and gratitude and kindness has always been the way I've navigated my principles. And if I have to go to the mat with these Machiavellian farmers, watch out.
It's funny that you mentioned IKEA. I spent 22 years at IKEA, so I understand their business approach very well. But it's funny. One thing I heard a quote the other day. It might have been yesterday or the day before, and it really stuck with me. And I think it's really quite appropriate in this moment. And I just wanted to share and see what your thoughts are behind it, because you said how you're all about the science too. And I can't remember who said it, but the quote is pretty much, science is worthless without the spirit behind it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And I that's very close to what I've been saying for years, and what I believe is right now we have a convergence of science and spirituality. Mm-hmm. And at this new nexus junction, I mean, I'm an amateur astronomer. I love astronomy. Who could not feel more spiritual looking at the hundreds of billions of galaxies in all forms, with the exploration of dark matter and black holes and the time distortion fields based on gravity, and looking at these lenses and you're seeing from stars are maybe 100 million years old. That star may not even exist, and we're at the coincidence with the space-time of this convergence of realities, some of which may not even exist now. How not feel more spiritual to me? So I think we're at this new stage in the evolution of the human species for a paradigm and consciousness where we can best of science and to realize the nature that around us is a spiritual universe in which we live. And we just need to respect and honor that, and very, very careful with these sacred medicines. And I am the first to admit that I've made mistakes. I make mistakes, but I am trying to do this in a way that's faithful to how I see these mushrooms speak through me, and I think about it constantly. So I hope the whole movement remains diversified. Believe in people medicine. I think harm reduction and public safety, doing this legally, and pay your friggin' taxes, folks.
Yeah.
And no freeloaders, okay? We all know about freeloaders. No freeloaders here. If you want to be in this ecosystem, you need to make sure that you're a responsible citizen, not only economically, but also ecologically.
Paul, this has been amazing. I really feel deep gratitude for the work you have been doing and are continuing to do. It's incredible and it's very inspiring and it's essential work that you're doing. So deep gratitude. Thanks so much, Paul.
It's truly a team effort. I want to give a few shout outs to Francois, to Hayden, to Dr. Pam Crisco, to Zach Walsh, to my good buddy David Bronner, Dr. Bronner's, to Roland Griffiths from Johns Hopkins. These are all pioneers in this field who are walking a tightrope, but they are strong in their purpose. They're strong in their wisdom. And I think they understand the importance of the work that's being done is far greater than any one individual, any one company. We are on this earth ship together. And I think collectively we make a really positive difference to help us steer us out of this mess. So I think psilocybin and mushrooms and psilocybin molecules and analogs are genius molecules. These are Einstein molecules. They can increase our intelligence. And we need to preserve the intelligence of our elders because we need to be able to pass this information on to younger generations. And we need to lead by example, not by exception.
Beautiful.
Well said. Thank you so much, Paul. It's always a pleasure to hear what you have to share and, and the way you back it up with the science and the information. And I got to say, by far, one of our most interesting interviews in the sense that you brought your slides and your videos and everything. So you brought our technology up a game too. So I thank you for that. That's always exciting. But I do appreciate the work that you do and your contribution to our conference coming up as well. I don't know how much time you got, and I think, Stephen, if there's anything else you want to say, and then we can wrap it up for the day.
No, I had a few more questions, but I thought you wanted to keep this within the frame.
Well, I did, but I wasn't as long as Paul was talking. I'm not going to interrupt him. I'm not going to cut him off. We're going to. I'm happy to go, and I'm just really grateful. And the information, paulstamets.com, you can get more information there. We'll have a whole page and some information as we share this on Conscious Living Radio. Mushroomreferences.com is another website that Paul has referenced for us as well for more information. And if you have any other final words before we sign off, Paul, this would be a great time.
No, I just want to gratitude to all of you. Gratitude for Indigenous peoples and First Nations who have suffered so much, hold on to this sacred knowledge, and even my Indigenous people from Europe. Many of the early Europeans were attacked and also subjugated because this medicine was so powerful and such a force against authoritarianism. That they tried to suppress it, and just from the heroic efforts and bravery and resilience of Indigenous people worldwide, that these threads of knowledge continue to exist. Let's weave this into a fabric of wisdom that we can pass on and help generations into the future. So thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And if you want to see more of what Paul has to offer at our Spirit Plant Medicine Conference in the 2 short weeks, we start October 23rd to 25th. We're going on a virtual platform, and we're excited about that. We do have, if you visit www.spiritplantmedicine.com, you can use Stamets 2020 as a discount code. You'll get a discount there. And we would just want to thank Paul again, and I thank you, Stephen. Always a pleasure to co-host with you. And Spirit Plant Medicine Conference, October 23rd to 25th. You've been listening to Conscious Living on CFRO 100.5 FM here in Vancouver, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Take care, everyone.